Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Clipboard. This time I'm with Jarrett from the
Hello, everyone.
simFBA. Like I told everybody, we're real people talking fake sports. And yes, Pierce said I could say that because it's true. We're real people talking fake sports with a lot of different things. Jarrett is, I believe, Vegas Raiders GM, Hawks owner, if I remember right, for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball Mariners, if I remember right, and
Mm-hmm.
then Western Michigan. And everybody's like, Western Michigan? Yeah, Western Michigan in our game is pretty good, people. So just let you know. Um, Jarrett, thanks for taking time out of your day to come hang out with us. Two ex-Army guys chatting fake sports.
It's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Right? I appreciate it. So, I think give me an idea. What really kind of brought you into this? I mean, who is Jarrett, and what is it that you do inside this sim?
Um, let's see. How do I start answering that? Um, as far as do you want me to answer what brought me to Sims to begin
Sure. I
with, or
mean,
to this sim?
I mean, who are you, and what kind of brought you? Why
Okay.
simulation sports? Period. I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, um, I'm retired Army, retired military. I used to, after my Army career, I became an instructor, and then somehow kept getting kicked upstairs. So they made me an instructor, then a team lead, then a program manager. Now I'm the director of operations for a small business. Um, as far as what that means for the sim and the audience here, that basically means I have less time to pay attention to stuff. So, sucks. Um, but as far as what brought me into simulation sports to begin with, I've always liked the idea of building things. Um, I think it was Sweezy who liked to say that this is just a recruiting simulation with occasional games in between to show how well you recruited or something
Mm-hmm.
along those lines. And that's very much where I am. When all the NCAA football games came out, I'd play them. I'd play them religiously, but more often than not, I get to the point where the only part I actually paid attention to was the recruiting.
Right.
And then after a while, I would just let the sim out the games. Didn't really care so much about the games except for how they impacted my recruiting. Um, so when I learned about these kinds of simulation football games where you get to build a team, you get to recruit, and then on the professional side, sign free agents, draft, and so on, make trades. I was all for that.
Okay. So you played, I'm assuming NCAA 14, like everybody
Mm-hmm.
else did, and
Sure
I
did.
think we all had the same. I want to say we probably all had the same thing because I loved it. You can ask my son Paradox. I'd play it, and I didn't like it. I wouldn't save and restart that game just so I could see how it impacted my recruits and get there. So I guess with that, I mean, how kind of approach building teams in it? Because obviously Western Michigan is kind of this upstart in the college
Uh-huh.
part of the simulation, and then with Vegas, it might be a different way how you approach it. But how do you kind of approach building a roster?
Um, if I was able to build a roster from scratch, I would probably aim for a balanced roster. Um, for as good as, which might sound kind of a little funny to you or to some other people who know the teams in the sim, because both Vegas and Western Michigan are pretty well known for passing the heck out of the ball,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but yeah, if I had my way to build a roster from scratch, I'd probably want something that was balanced because I would like to be able to beat you even when you take away my main weapon. Oh, you took away
Okay.
my passing game, I can still run the ball all over you, and vice versa. Um, Now, having said that, why are Vegas and Western Michigan so pass heavy? In the case of Western Michigan, it was pretty much how the roster was generated. Um, the players I was given when we started pretty much lent themselves very heavily to passing the ball, air raid. Theo Scribner throwing for 7 touchdowns downfield. So as much as I'd like to be balanced there, it's, well, that's what they gave me. That's what I'm going to roll with. Now, over time, I may, start to focus more on the run aspects, but, that's going to be, that's very much a work in progress. As far as Vegas goes, I'm the GM and the coach, but, culture is the owner. And, as a GM, I've always felt that if I wasn't the GM/owner, if I was reporting to someone else, I always felt as a GM, it was my job to know what the owner and the coach wants to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then buy them or get them the best possible tools to do it. So, culture wants a very much, air raid offense, right?
Okay.
He wants the, we're going to throw downfield, the good olden days of the Raiders, just, speed, throw. So, that's what he wants. That's what he's going to get. So I'm going to find him the best players and, try to figure out the best way for us to win while doing that.
Right. It was interesting because you said old Raiders. I remember watching Stabler and Todd Christensen and all those guys playing, and that was very vertical. And the fact that he stayed with that made me feel good, even though I'm not a huge Raiders fan. I respect the old game. And there's, I guess the real big question is, how did you and culture kind of just meet up and create this pairing?
Well, so as far as how I joined the Raiders, basically I was not in the pro game for the first season of simFBA. And I was just kind of hanging around because I wasn't sure I'd have the time. But he basically, you may remember that he used to work with Bundy quite a bit.
Right.
But, in simNFL, culture had the Raiders, Bundy took the Vikings. So obviously they can't work together. So he basically messaged me and was like, hey, come on, I need you. Come on over. I want to work with you. So that's how that started. But I also I may have mentioned before, or some of you may remember, I talked about traveling quite a bit in my olden days as an instructor. And I actually did meet up with culture face to face, right before the pandemic, actually. I think it was like the very last instructing trip I got to take before everything shut down to COVID. Teaching out in the desert at Fort Irwin.
Okay.
So the closest airport that you could drive to in a reasonable distance and a reasonable time frame was Vegas.
Right.
2 hours away. So, once we were done teaching, we drove to Vegas, stayed the night for a counter flight. Message, mentioned I'd be in Vegas. Culture said, yeah, let's meet up. So we got to talking. Talked about old sim, and he had a quarterback named Aaron Harden or UCLA. Talked about him a bit and just that Tesla cars, a few other things.
You're right.
His dad was confused because I popped up and he thought I was a client.
Oh,
so but yeah, that's how we hooked up, and I took over as the GM. Very happy to do so.
Okay. That's pretty good. So I guess the big question is, does he have a bowl cut like the Davis kid does?
No bowl cut. A little more stylish than that.
Okay. It's one of those ones, like, I love how culture plays his persona in the sim. And and it's like, I kind of asked because I had T Sweezy on, I asked him, is this an avatar? I mean, do you portray yourself in the sim how you really are? Or is it kind of this character that you create? So, I mean, is Jarrett, or is this a figment of our imagination that we're seeing?
For the most part, what you see there is what you get, or what you read online is what you get. I can create a persona if I wanted to, but usually I'd have to spend way too much mental energy to try to keep it up for the most part, so I don't even bother.
Right.
I might be a little more sarcastic or trolly a little bit
Right.
in the Discord than I normally am in real life, but not by terribly much. So yeah, what you see is what you get.
Okay. So I know we got spring games going on. I think did you guys play last night or you played today?
We played last night. We did
How'd
not
that
win.
turn out? Okay. But how did you play? Did it play up to your expectations and just ran out of time? Because a lot of us will play, I guess the second part of the question is, how do you approach a spring game versus a regular game? Were you playing some of these younger recruited players and transfer players, or were you playing out to win?
It's kind of a mix. I played pretty close to what I expect to be my starting roster.
Okay.
I think because one of the biggest questions I have is I like my roster, but we're starting a redshirt freshman at quarterback.
Okay.
I've been kind of semi-hyping him up, but at the same time, if we struggle this year, it's gonna be because he struggles.
Okay.
So, I wanted to see how that would work out. He played okay. The stats he had won't wow you. I think he went something like 17 of 31 for about 180 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So not great numbers.
Yeah, right.
But,
I just pulled up the game here. You played Stanford. You played Ricky, who's another one of those guys. Ricky, hopefully you will find time in your medical world to come on the show. Just a hint. Willie Robinson is the guy you're talking about.
Yes.
15 for 31 for 134, a touchdown, interception, and a sack. And both quarterbacks were sacked 3 times, which is interesting because you went pistol, which is kind of a change for you. Haven't you always just been air raid?
We used to be. Well, when we first started, we were air raid, yes, in the Theo Scribner days. And then the last 2 years, in 22 and 23, I had a field general as our quarterback. The first year in 22, we played him at air raid because that was with only the 4 schemes. There was air raid, spread,
power,
and then
double wing.
Double wing, yes. So air raid was probably the best we could do for him, and to be blunt, he was terrible. He was not suited for an air raid whatsoever. Fortunately, in 2023, that's when the schemes got expanded, so I shifted to a West Coast offense, and he looked a lot better. But now that he's graduated, so now we're using Willie Robinson. He's a pocket guy, so I could have gone back to air raid, but I think my biggest offensive weapon this year is going to be our quarterback turned running back, David Ponce de Leon.
Okay.
So I wanted to feature him more, so I'm trying pistol out to see how that works out. I haven't decided if I'm going to, for the other 2 weeks, if I'm going to shift schemes to see if I can work with that a little bit more, or, just rotate players through to see how some of the newer ones would do.
Okay.
I haven't quite decided on that one yet. This first game did teach me a little bit of a few things about our offense, though. Mostly that I probably don't need to have as much short passing as I did in this game.
Okay.
And also that I probably should let my field goal kicker try a few more things, because there were quite a few drives that stalled at about the 25 or so where we ended up punting the ball away instead of trying like a 42 or 43 yard field goal. So I should probably pay attention to that slider.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something exciting. I was looking at Ponce de Leon, 18 for 146 and a touchdown. So that's over 8 yards a carry.
Yeah. He got hurt halfway through the third, though, so that was unfortunate.
Okay. So people that play you this year, that should be scary that he got hurt halfway through the third and still put up 150 yards on people.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping that more people would look at us on this calendar and just say, oh, okay, yeah, he's just going to pass it. and not do that. But after thinking about it, if I was going to try and surprise people, I probably shouldn't have played Ponce de Leon so heavily in the first spring game. And
Well,
then
you got
to talk about it.
You got two more to change. You know, I could edit this out real quickly.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not like people couldn't see it for themselves.
Right, because I know because you had Warble and Wu both, and they really weren't used much, even though they're running backs. But the fact that Stanford was able to have a running back put 250 yards on you, is that a concern for your defense?
That is a concern. I think it's a possibility I might have overplayed the pass. And then, there's always the question of, did I actually remember which way I was supposed to set the sliders when I was doing my defensive game plan?
Okay.
But yeah, definitely something to look at, because we graduated Robertson Moore, our stud do-everything inside linebacker from last year.
Right.
Easily the best player on our defense last year, and he got taken, I think, in round 2 of this draft.
Okay.
So it's definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve without him, because I also shifted defensive schemes as well.
Okay.
We were running more of a 3-4 based defense. I can't remember off the top of my head which one last year, but this year we're more of in a 4-man front. So we're trying that out because I'm very much about trying to switch schemes to fit who I have.
Okay. I
said earlier that I'd like to be balanced, and I have this ideal vision of where I'd like to be, but if we're not there, then I gotta play the hand I'm dealt. So I gotta find the best use for who I have on the roster right now.
Right. So I guess part of that is when you're recruiting or free agency, whatever. Do you have like a player archetype in mind? Hey, I know you said balanced offense, and see, I'm a very run first coach just because of my coaching background. But I have an archetype that I look for. I have a certain type of player that I look for. I know with players having archetypes now in the game as well. How are you putting those pieces together? Are you looking for something specific, especially with recruiting, because we don't know much about them other than the letter grades?
Right.
I mean, how do you kind of put that stuff together as you build?
It's a gradual process. One of the great things about our sim and our interface, shout out to Tuscan, is that you can recruit for a scheme that you're not playing, right? Mm-hmm. Like last year, I was recruiting for the pistol because I was like, I want to try this next year, even though in last year I was running West Coast. So I was able to find, focusing on balanced quarterbacks or pocket quarterbacks and balanced running backs and so on and so on. So knowing that I'm working towards something, I will look for those kinds of players. I will tend to focus on them. Having said that, if I can find someone who seems under-recruited and I think I have a good shot at them, even if they're not a perfect scheme fit, I'll still go after them. A good example would be the 5-star wide receiver that I brought in last year. Mm-hmm. He was a California kid. His name's Ismael Leon. Mm-hmm. And he's a red zone threat, so not a fit for pistol. But I thought I'd have a good shot at him, and I basically bullied a couple of teams off of him, primarily Tulane.
I mean, everybody bullies Tulane.
Yeah, although it's kind of hilarious how, as much as everyone bullies Tulane absolutely dog walks Tennessee when it comes to cornerbacks.
Yeah. K Green's a neat guy, and I need to get him back on here too. So I guess because when we talked with TC Sweezy, he talked about, I remember him making that comment in the threads about, this is a recruiting simulation. And he goes, there's a way I handle recruiting. And he talked about, there's a lot of people on them. I'm just going to go look for that one guy that nobody else is on.
Yes.
Is that kind of your approach to it as well? Or do you find a guy and go, I'm going to get him?
There are a couple of guys that I'll tend to fight for, but I will try to find people that I think I can get easier. Having said that, at the risk of inflating the Sweezy a bit, I've definitely learned some things from him in recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like there was one guy he picked up last year that, I was not expecting him to go for at all, but he absolutely killed it. He put himself on there, even though that was not necessarily from an affinity standpoint, is not someone you thought he'd go for, but he did. And, once he got that early lead, everyone saw, oh crap, Tennessee, and just never bothered.
Right.
So he got himself a 5-star basically for nothing. I think he was like a top 10 guy too.
Right. Right.
So,
I think
yeah.
everybody's learned from T Sweezy. I mean, I do too. I mean, that's why I was glad he was on and just talking with him and kind of sometimes confirming what I'm thinking as well. Because I've been playing other sims like JW, who's at SMU, who has Theo at Kansas City. He and I come from a different sim called What If Sports in Gridiron Dynasty, where I've been in there, come this November will be 20 years. So the interface is a little bit different. In fact, I'm trying to get some of their people to come over and start talking so we can all have this nice little roundabout going. But just when you're evaluating players, whether it's for the Raiders or for basketball or for football, whatever, I mean, are there certain traits you just kind of this is what I've got to have in my players?
I guess it depends on the sport. I'll start with basketball because I guess it's probably one of the easiest ones to delineate, right? In basketball, we talk about defense, we talk about shooting, we talk about rebounding and free throws and ball handling. And I guess I kind of fall into the whole traditional mindset as far as, a point guard should be able to do this, should be able to handle the ball well and pass the ball well and play good perimeter defense. A shooting guard should be able to shoot threes and, and be okay at defense. And, a center should be able to block the crap out of stuff and rebound and, not totally embarrass themselves in the paint.
Right.
So, from basketball wise, I kind of look for that. When it comes to football, on the college side, it's hard, right? Because as you mentioned before, when you're recruiting players, all we know are grades, overall potential. We don't really know anything about the individual run versus blocking or whatever else until, they step on campus. So all you can really do is just look at scheme fits and, future holes in your roster and so on and so on. Because when I'm recruiting, I'm not recruiting for this year. I'm recruiting for what I think my roster is going to look like in 2 years from now. I don't, unless you're pulling in numerous top, 5 stars and whatever, you really shouldn't be expecting them to be playing next year unless something's gone terribly wrong.
Right.
Now, as far as the pros go, it's very much whatever the scheme is. Again, in my case, in Vegas, we're running air raid. We know we're running air raid. We're not switching off of that anytime soon. So, we're not going to min max. I'm not looking for, okay, these are the air raid specs and that's all I'm ever going to look for and damn everything else. But, we do want to put some emphasis on, high quality receivers, great pass blockers, ideally that don't embarrass themselves in the run game. Because, we do have to keep people honest from time to time.
Okay,
and,
you said Vegas and honest in the same words. Those don't go together.
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird, isn't
really
it?
strange.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, if you remember this end to last season, Vegas kind of lost a bunch of their last games, missed the playoffs. Part of that was because our starting quarterback Hickson got hurt and his backup was horrible. But another part of that was I was one of those that did not adjust to the meta of all blitz all the time. So, we were the ones getting hit for 8, 9, 10 sacks a game. And, I didn't quite catch on until it was way too late why the heck that was happening. So I did not adjust to like, max screens and, max quick passes or whatever the heck else we were supposed to do about that. So,
Right.
um, we'll see. I'm also one of those that, I think a lot of people have us projected to finish third in the division this year, behind Denver and the Chargers. And to be honest, yeah, that's kind of fair.
Right.
This is unlike, I'm not one of those GMs that's like, gotta sell out for a championship every year, which, considering the Raiders and the just win baby motto from the old days, sounds kind of weird. But I've never been one to, nope, flags fly forever. So we're just going to sell our first round picks for the next 5 years just to bring in all these guys.
Mhm.
I've never liked doing that. Even if it's technically the smart thing to do, I just can't bring myself to do that. So I'd much rather build up and be as sustainable as possible.
Right. So long term, you're looking a little bit more of a long term build versus
Yes.
got to build. For a lot of people, because the sim was early, I would need to capture it now because everybody. I remember the first year I really didn't do much, but once they did that, they expanded. They started do the rosters. We could kind of look at what we had with the cap sheets and stuff, and build. And a lot of teams are like just bailing because they knew they couldn't win. Carolina. I mean, a lot of teams. I'm not just. I think Carolina did a masterful job of what they did to get to where they're at now. Versus a lot of people just bailed thinking they could get there. Carolina had a plan, and that's from Jambo, and him and Sarge had a plan on that.
Yes.
Where other teams, Denver, Washington, is like, we'll take all those guys because we're going to win now because we know we may not, and in 5 years when the cap hits, we're not going to survive. So let's get them now and be the first ones.
Let's get as many rings as we can in these first 4 or 5 years before these contracts catch up with us.
Yeah, very, very much the old Green Bay model of the 60s. Let's win rings. Dallas model of the 70s. Let's win rings. And then see how it goes. And because I know TCBZ talked about it may be a year or two before that happens, but he's cognizant of that.
Yes.
Where some people I don't think are.
Yeah, and it's frustrating for a lot of the owners, right? You see Denver and Washington just roll over everybody pretty much. And, every time it's like, oh, look, they traded for another 80 rated player and they gave up like, a first 5 years from now. I'm exaggerating, of course, but, it's like another, oh, look, it's basically a second round pick they gave for this guy. And, I got to give them their props because, as much as people, and I was one of those that kind of hated on them for doing what they were doing. They played in the rules as much as they could. There were definitely some gray areas, but again, you dance in the gray, so that's fine. And just props to them for realizing what the rules were as far as like salary, et cetera, and, playing within that as much as possible to gather up as much as they can and, stockpile as many talent as much talent as they could. And, shoot their shot while they can. Ironically, I think Washington's actually for as much as Sweezy came on and said, yeah, we only got a couple years left. I think they're actually in better shape than Denver is as far as their cap situation goes, which is funny to say because if you looked at, I don't know if you saw do you see the screenshot Sweezy took of his cap sit over the next 5 years?
I could probably go look it up. It's one of those ones because with my job, I'm at work at 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't follow the Discord as much as I used to.
Yeah, it was basically after like a trade he had just made a few days ago. And he has basically showed that he was negative cap for like for this year and the 3 years after that.
Right.
And it's so that's why I say, even though you see that kind of thing, and it's funny to say, I think he's actually in a better spot just because he has more contracts that are not bonus only. So he has more space to maneuver and cut people. If you can't, fleece somebody into trading for a overpaid 68 rated wide receiver that's going to make like $7 million over the next 3 years per year. But Denver's time's coming, Washington's time's coming. Funnily enough, I think I don't know that they haven't really intentionally tried to do it this way, but I think the Rams are kind of in the same boat.
Right.
Just because they've been leaning on like their big players, their Avila and Baldwin and the other wide receiver who I cannot remember off the top of my head. But like they've been leaning on those guys for so long and, trading away picks to kind of, bring in supplemental talent around them that,
Right.
once Avila drops off and once Baldwin drops off,
Well, because don't they have Dawson at running back too?
Yeah, that's true. I guess they can always shift to more of a we're just going to pound the ball down your throat with Dawson kind of thing.
Yeah, because you got Baldwin. I just pulled them up because you have Anthony Larry, James LeClaire, Scott Baldwin, which is funny because I went to high school with a kid named Scott Baldwin. Graveman, Nemo, Mathis, and Jones as receivers. And then you have obviously their tight ends too are always dangerous. They do a very good job of using their tight ends.
They do. It's really something because, just look at how I introduced them a few minutes ago, right? I said Avila and their two wide receivers.
Yeah.
And then somehow Slomba comes in and he's like, even though he's so good, everyone forgets about him because everyone's thinking, oh, they're just throwing downfield to Baldwin and Larry.
Yeah. It comes down from a game planning standpoint. It's like, okay, how do you deal with these weapons? Because there's only so much we can do with our sliders, really. I mean, you can't go like, okay, I'm going to bracket this guy, I'm going to banjo that, we're going to run Meg here, we're going to do that, we're going to rotate, we're going to simp. We can't do that yet. I'm hoping that eventually you can do simulated pressures because that would really change, I think, how people game plan. You kind of mentioned this. You talked about at Western Michigan throwing the ball early on, and then we expanded from 4 schemes to 12 on the offense and to basically 6 on defense, and how you're looking at down the road. Do you already have your schemes game plan for the next few years? Because I knew at Wisconsin we were going to run the ball, period. And then I moved. Now I'm in Arkansas, so I got to go through that process again.
Do I have it planned? Not to a specific scheme. I did say at the beginning that ideally I'd like to be balanced. So I want a scheme that's somewhere in that balance range. I know pistol is probably the end all be all as far as balance goes for our schemes right now. Is that where I want to be settled? I don't know yet. I kind of want to play around with it a little bit and see what else makes sense. But it's probably going to be somewhere in that range. Maybe not on the spread option side since that's more for scramblers, but something along those lines, or at the very least, something, I want balance, but at the same time, I'm not always going to be recruiting or be able to recruit for balance 100%, or things are going to show up in a way that certain players have developed much better than others. So It's like, oh, these are my stars now, so I have to, work around them. I have to build around them. So if that means even though I may want a nice balanced scheme like pistol or whatever, if the people I have, the personnel I have on hand, say this year you're going to run West Coast or this year you're going to run run and shoot or vertical, then that's what I'm going to do. I have my ideal, but I'm not going to let it get in the way of what I have right now.
Okay, so I guess kind of following up on the ideas, you have this, you played Air Raid, and you talked about this brief earlier, dealing with the defensive meta. I mean, obviously, the defensive meta was in response to the offensive meta.
Right.
Vertical speed down the field throw. yeah, you're going to give up sacks, but you're going to get touchdowns too. Where the defensive response was, okay, we're going to blitz 100%. And I figured that out probably about game 5 last year with my Titans. You saw me all of a sudden just like went blitz heavy. Frick it, just I don't care. I have a good secondary, but I'm coming after you. I guess, and we saw this year in the offseason a nerf to the defensive meta.
Yes.
But did we see an offensive meta nerf?
I don't know. Because you pointed out that in our spring game, Stanford's running back went for like 250 yards. And I seem to remember Kay Green in the chat on Discord saying that, PMS went for like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Threw for 4 touchdowns, passed for over 400 yards. So I don't know if the offensive meta has been solved necessarily. I have to admit that when the Rocket posted the changelog, I was more paying attention to the defensive side of things than the offensive side, which I think most people did, quite frankly. But the nice thing is we'll have a couple more weeks to figure things out. Plus, there's always the caveat is, did they really play against like the number 1 squad on the opposing side? Like Stanford, they pretty much did. I'm not going to lie. They pretty much played against most of my starters, if not all. Couple of spots up for debate. But I guess we'll wait and see, because it's kind of hard to say. And you mentioned the defensive schemes. Defense, I think, is a little harder to build for, because yes, you can build towards a specific scheme, right? You can build towards, okay, I got to get a bunch of run stoppers. And because that's the scheme says they like run stopping. And they don't like this kind of linebacker or defensive end or whatever. But the problem is that those defensive schemes also have offensive schemes they're good against and offensive schemes they're not good against. So you're not just having to consider, well, I got 4-3 personnel, so let me build a 4-3 defense. You also have to look around and say, well, I could build for, say, an old school style defense that's 4-3 and just focuses on the run, 1960s, 70s Bears and all that kind of stuff, and just stuff the run all the time. But then, who am I playing against? Who my in the MAC, do we have more passing teams? Do we have more running teams? Because I could build the best old school defense there is out there. But if I'm just, weak to all air raid and 5 or 6 or 7 teams in the MAC are air raid teams, then am I just putting myself at a huge disadvantage? So you combine that with the whole, well, I got to play who I got versus, and what I'm recruiting. It makes it a lot harder on defense, I think.
Right. I guess kind of this, I know like on the NFL side, it's easier to adjust our offense player-wise quicker than his defense. Like in Tennessee, we went from 3 to 4-man front last year. Everybody's like, why'd you do that? There's reasons we did it, but it's also kind of like, it wasn't easy to do on the defense side. It was easier for me to flip from pistol to West Coast than it was to flip from a 3-4 to a 4-3. No, it was like, I'm not sure if it was the number of people out there or just the cost of them, but I just know it's harder to work. It's like, I watched in Wisconsin, we were a 4-man front. We're staying 4-man front. As much as I wanted to run 3, just because the depth there was 4-man side. And just, it would have been too hard. It would have taken, on the college side, it would have taken probably 3 years of solid recruiting to a 3-4 to get that in place to be successful with that, I guess would be the thing.
Yeah.
So I guess, I guess kind of my question is like, yeah, they responded to the defensive meta, but do you think they should have also responded to the pass happy meta a little bit more?
I think they did need to address the whole long pass thing somewhat. Again, I didn't really look at the changelog fully, so I can't really say how much they looked at it.
Right.
You know, and I'm always one of those people that, I trust the dev team, I trust Rocket
Mhm.
and, all the beta testers. So, um, I'm not going to say they should have or they shouldn't have, right now. Um, you know, it may sound weird in today's world, but I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing and, work on it. And if something did not work as intended, or, there's a hole here, or they didn't patch the meta as well as they should have, okay, got it. Too bad about this season. They can iterate and work on it for next season because, they built this engine from scratch.
Yeah.
So, it's not something they were going to get right in the first year or even 2 or 3 years. There's always
Exactly.
things you got to work on, as realize that, oh, this was a problem as time goes on. And, they're, and they're never going to get it perfectly right. That's just not possible, because even if they think they did, you know, someone like me or someone like you or someone like Sweezy or Alex is going to find something. It's like, oh, we can do this. And then it totally does something that no one had thought about.
Hmm.
You know, um, just like Sarge and the everybody blitz all the time party.
Yeah. It's interesting because as we kind of look at this and kind of play with it, and for those people that aren't familiar with the Simulation Football Association, or simFBAs, these were guys that we all left a different sim. These gentlemen are building this on their own time, their own dime. It's a passion project for them, for lack of a better term. Like we talked to Tuscan before, and how he went and then built the hockey on his own to build it, because that's something that's important to him. Where when the Simulation FL, it's based on the ESPN 2K4 football game. You're a player in it or an owner of a franchise in it. Obviously, like we're the Pittsburgh River Hogs. I'm the general manager and the fullback for them. And then, there's Albuquerque Adams and Lexington. And so the teams aren't exactly, New York Jets and Giants, but you're all based on, you have some bases, and everybody progresses as a player. For Sheer, this is a passion project. So I guess the question is, how do you approach this as a game or a simulation? Because that is like an ongoing debate in the Discord since the old sim. Is this a sim or is this a game?
That's a good question. I guess I feel like it's more of a simulation. But it's, it's a social simulation in that, I can't just, implement my game plan and expect it to work perfectly. I can't recruit who I want easily because, there's always other people, going after the same people I am.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me to think of it as a game, I would probably have to think of it as something where, when the games are going on, I have more control over it. So I think earlier you mentioned, if I can roll a safety down pre-snap, or if I can implement simulate pressures, if I can adjust to the game flow,
Mm-hmm.
switch schemes, or, double a different person halfway through the game. I guess that's probably when I'd start seeing this as more of a game than a simulation. But having said that, I don't think the difference matters to me too terribly much, because in the end, this is something I enjoy doing. I love playing. I love being here with you guys and, struggling to recruit against you all and playing against you all. So whether it's a game or simulation, I've never really thought too much about it, because it's just something I love to do with you. So,
yeah. Just kind of looking at this, and a lot of us are here because of the social aspect. This is very much a social game.
Yes.
Where a lot of us, like myself, coming from over 2 decades on the sidelines of high school and junior high football, it's like Rockets defensive side, on the offensive side. And it's like, okay, how do you balance what you see versus to get the code to do it. I know Tuscan mentioned that a little bit too. How do we translate that over? Would I guess from coming from like a coaching inside the simulation, the coaching aspect of it, having the ability to make halftime adjustments, would that be something you'd be in favor of?
If it was feasible with the code, and the obvious answer is yes, I would love to do that. Um, would it be feasible? I don't know. Um, would would it be something that the dev team can do without having to figure out, spend, say, 6 to 9 months having to rewrite code in order to do it? If they got to take that much time, I don't think, as much as I'd love to do it, that's not something I think I'd be in favor of, just because, there is a rhythm to this game, to the seasons. And, we understand that off season, sometimes things are broken, so they got to get fixed. So it's going to take longer. We understand. We get that. But, when things are put on pause for several months at a time because, well, we're rewriting this thing that, maybe only a portion of us would use because the others are like, that's too much work, I'm just going to AI it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to pause the game for that long just to implement that. Again, I'd love to see it, but I wouldn't want to see it at the expense of, potentially driving people away from the game just because, well, we can't do anything while this is going on.
Right.
And I understand that you have the basketball leagues and the hockey league now, and someday, Alex, baseball might actually start up to kind of keep us busy in the meantime. But, some of us only like to play one or two of the sports.
Right. I was just thinking it'd be kind of just because we're talking about our head. Maybe got cool because we could, if somebody's burning us, I don't want to say the same game plan all the time. As a coach, I'm going to adjust to that. I'll find something in game, literally as the flow of the game. Like, we're going to do this. Yeah, I know it gives up this in response, but are they going to see that quick enough to take advantage of it? Type thing. Kind of neat as you go through there. I guess, is there like, you talked about being military, about being a trainer, working, doing what you do. Is there like any sorts of your real life aspects of your real life that you bring into this game? Obviously, you said being balanced is an aspect, but
yes,
is there more that you go, yeah, that's Jarrett. That's his personality in there.
I guess, because earlier you talked about personas and is this me or is this, a part I'm playing for the sim. So I guess the easy and cop-out answer is I'm bringing all of me into it. And earlier we did also talk about how, how my approach to team building is more build things up gradually rather than sell out to just, get the win the championship right away, or, completely tank and, that's not me. I'm never gonna tank a game, but to like get better draft position or whatever. But I think just in the general approach I take to the game, that's me. I want to build up and I want to be sustainable. That's me. I have an unhealthy fascination with spreadsheets. Because I don't know, one of my favorite subjects when I was in school was math for some reason. So, I'll build spreadsheets and try to automate things for myself, which is funny considering I was like, AI, I don't use that stuff. But no, right? Spending a lot of time on Google to try and remember how to write regex so that I can automatically have data pop up in this cell over here. Yeah, that's me. Which again is funny because on top of the AI thing, I still have yet to learn how to do things like write Visual Basic to even automate my spreadsheets even more. and I still have not learned how to do a pivot table. So there's still a lot of work there, but I guess the fact that I like to be balanced, I like to be gradual, I like to tinker with things, but kind of that jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. I'll work on things a lot, like the spreadsheets, the draft books that I've made probably make people think I'm better with spreadsheets than I really am.
Right.
Sorry, I kind of strayed away from the question a bit, but that's me. I'm balanced. I tinker. Probably not as focused as I should be, but
Right. Well, it's interesting you brought up Visual Basic because T. Sweezy uses that to help with his stuff, which leads me to a question. Do you have like an algorithm that you work off of? Because I know like on the Titan side, even on the Jazz side with my basketball, I have an algorithm I use. I've built and compiled. And I know Sage and I talk all the time. And Sage is only going to give you so much because he's got his proprietary stuff. But watching what some of these people do and how they get to be so accurate. I know Jambo and those guys probably got something too, because they all come from the same cloth. They were all on the same team together, if I remember right, in the old sim. So it's like, do you have like a way you approach it, or is it kind of like, eye test, or is there some math behind it?
It's a little bit of math and a little bit of eye test. I don't have an algorithm the way that others do. Like I'll look at numbers and I'll look at testing results and I'll look at stats and I'll weigh some of those numbers more than others, but not to the point where I've punched them in to this into this spreadsheet and this number came out and that's the number I'm going off of, so yeah, it's there's no algorithm. I do look at some numbers and I'll compare numbers. But I'm not going to go so deep as to, put everyone's stats and everyone's combine and pro days into the sheet and it spits out these results so that I can rank them like the way that Sweezy or Sage would.
Right.
Not that if I had the time, I would love to do that. But yeah, I'm not there.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, I'm in multiple sims. I actually take aspects of every sim here and build that algorithm, and it's an ongoing process. And then it's like, now I got to put it in. Now I got to break it down by position. Got to put the formula in. Because with the Wheels Off podcast, I have what's called the Whopper rating, the Wheels Off podcast rating, the Whopper. That's an overall, but then I have a position specific based on, like with me, I like more of a power run game. That's just how I am. That's how I coached. You can ask Paradox when he was playing for me. Is it in 6th grade? We ran the same play 13 times in a row.
Hey, if
you don't stop it, I'm good.
13 times. I'm going to run it 13 times.
Yeah, I'm going to run it 13, and we literally ran 12 or 13 times until we finally scored. But it's just that idea is there's a certain style I like to play defensively. I tend to be more of a balanced defensive. I'm going to put pressure, but I'm also going to, to me, I create what I call a run wall. I want to stop that run because I want you to be one-dimensional. Now, if you don't ever run, how do I deal with you? Comes the question, how do I deal with a Jaguars or a Tennessee, Volunteers team or Raiders? In fact, when we played, I never beat you, I think, until this year. I think this was the first time I've ever beat the Raiders, because it's like I could just never handle your air raid. Why do you think I was drafting cornerbacks for 3 freaking years in a row? Because I have teams that throw the ball.
Yeah, Jacksonville and I think, Indianapolis was pretty pass heavy until this year, I think.
Yeah, they were. I would split with Jacksonville. I would split with Indianapolis. I would beat the Texans. I think it'll start switching a little bit more, where the Texans will probably beat me more than I will beat them, just because Tennessee, we're kind of in that little lull. It's like, do we just do rebuild, or can we No,
Can we
gradually
keep
get it
the
back
plane?
up.
Can we retool the plane while it's still flying in the air?
Yeah, literally, I'm thinking the penguins in Madagascar 2 or whatever, or Madagascar 3, where they're literally taping stuff in the plane as it's falling to the ground.
Yeah,
That's what I'm in that mode right now. Do I
yeah.
really
I
want to
think
commit?
I'm there too. Because like the Raiders, we traded away our top cornerback to the Panthers. We traded away our number 2 wide receiver to the Chargers. I know Trey Sest. But they were both like 80 players. Well, the wide receiver was like an 80, and the cornerback was an 84. So I know all the NFC South people are hating me because I gave them, like probably the 2 best cornerbacks in the league right now on the team.
Well, if you're not in the AFC South, I don't really care.
Yeah,
I'm good.
But because we did that because we wanted the picks because our core is getting really, really old. If it wasn't for the prime age reworking, where people could play longer into their careers, the wheels, no pun intended, would have really fallen off of the Raiders already because James Hickson is like in his 10th year,
Right.
9th year. Hold on, I gotta look it up. Look at me. I can't talk about my own team properly.
They're just numbers on a page, literally, for me.
Yeah, I know. But, it's fun to...
I was your Raymer. No. Yeah, Conti, my tackle. But
Yeah, so he's in his 10th year now. And what's hilarious is he actually went +3.
that's nice to get that bump.
It's very nice. Because my original thinking was we had to sign Hickson to a deal because we had absolutely no one else. And, a couple of years ago, we thought we could make one more run at it. But Agnew fell off a cliff, so we just had to straight up cut him. The big free agency running back that we beat out Washington for actually regressed. So we still have a lot of talent left. James Blank is probably one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Right.
So as long as he and Hickson are there, we're never out of a game. But at the same time, we also realize, no, we're not in a position to try to go for it and try to compete with the Broncos and maybe even rub shoulders with the Chargers or whatever else.
Right.
So yeah, we made those trades to trade our wide receiver 2 to the Chargers and trade our top cornerback to the Panthers, to get more draft picks. Having said that, I am all for still making moves to make our team better right now if it makes sense. If it doesn't cost me too much in the future, or if it doesn't handicap me cap-wise. A good example would be the trade I didn't make. Arizona traded Leon Payne, the stud defensive tackle, to Green Bay recently. That's a kind of trade that if I had been more aggressive, I totally could and would have made that trade.
Right.
Because, I think the price was a second and a sixth, if I remember correctly.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
As much as I love the upcoming draft classes, for someone like Leon Payne, who's at 83 rating, I think, and has 3 or 4 more years left on his contract, and it's all non-guaranteed too. So if he falls off a cliff, I can cut him in 2 years. That is totally the kind of trade that I would have made if I guess if I'd been paying attention and been more aggressive about it.
Right.
So I'm not gonna completely wed to the idea of, okay, we're rebuilding and that's all we're at, or okay, we're gonna go for it and damn the torpedoes, just go all in. We tried that a couple of years ago, didn't work so well.
Right.
We won the division and then Kansas City beat us in the playoffs anyway. So hooray!
Right. You mentioned Theo Scribner
Yes.
early on. and you're watching him at Kansas City, and I know there's been a lot of talk. I'd love to have JW and I talk in Discord all the time. I mean, he hasn't translated his success over. Is that a scheme issue? Is that a overhype issue? I mean, because there was a lot of hype around Theo.
I think primarily it's a scheme issue. Now, I might be biased. No, listen, who am I kidding? I'm totally biased.
You're biased. Yeah.
I'm biased. Heisman winner Theo Scribner.
Yeah.
Having said that, I was surprised that Kansas City took him in the first round a couple of years ago. Because, yes, Heisman winner. Yes, he threw for a crap ton of yards, and he holds school records and pretty much everything related to passing. But I thought he was a day 2 pick.
Mm-hmm.
So to see him in the first round, I was happy, but I was also kind of sad because he was in our division, and I was like, if he does well, that means he's doing well against us, and mixed feelings there. But I was also surprised because Kansas City at the time was so focused on the run. It's it was very much a case of Scribner's there and he's good, but you drafted a dude in the first round to primarily hand the ball off,
right?
Like John Peters. Now if I remember correctly, I think JW's made some moves to try and become more a passing-oriented team. So I'm kind of hopeful that this is the year we get to see if Scribner was actually worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I say kind of course, because he's in our division. So again,
come on, you only get to see him twice. It's okay.
You get to see him twice, sure. He can go 4-2 against the division. We'll put it that way, and I'd be happy with that. And of course, where those 2 L's should come from. We hope. But
yeah, Denver.
Yeah.
One Denver and one LA.
Yeah. Probably. But
well, you traded away your best corner, so
we did. Yeah, we're a little more flatter. I like the depth we have, but obviously we don't have that true shutdown corner like we used to.
Mm.
But yeah, getting back to Scribner, I'm hopeful that this is the year that he actually gets to show that he was worth the investment. Whether he will be or not, I have no idea. But I'm hopeful that he shows it. Because obviously, I want the guy to do well.
Right. Yeah, because I know the talk is like everybody's talking about him. In fact, when we did the mocks, they had him going like top 10. I'm like, this guy's not a top 10. This guy's the day 2, maybe.
Yeah,
one, maybe more likely day 2. And I think Sage and I talked about that as well in the Discord. And then see him go to was, I mean, is he the Johnny Manziel of the simFBA?
Well, I mean, he went like in the late first, so
like 20-something, like 23rd, 23rd or 24th. It's like 20s.
Yeah, in the mid 20s somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
It was still a little bit of a surprise because I don't think anyone thought any of the quarterbacks were worth like a first round pick. So yeah, his Heisman and his numbers he put up at Western definitely kind of gave him a little more helium than he probably should have gotten. But
right,
good for him. He got that money. Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to follow Kansas City, quite frankly, more than the other teams in my division, just because we know what we have with Denver. We know what we have with the Chargers, even if we don't know how they'll do, just because, Dean has not been shy about his moves or what he expects to do or what he wants to do. With Kansas City, JW doesn't really talk too much in the Discord, and he's been making moves here and there and making a lot of retooling stuff, and, he's changed out some of his scheme players, so it'll be really fascinating to see where they are.
Right.
And I know most people have the Chiefs picked to finish last in the division, but it's not necessarily because they're a bad team. It's just because the AFC West is silly.
Right. Well, I'm looking at Kansas City. They got Scribner. They got Joseph Valenzuela now. I had him, and it was a trade over. So it's a veteran on a cheap contract to back him up.
Oh, right.
Right. You have Del Pazzo, who's a field general, and then Epps, who's a pocket guy, who's a year 5 guy.
Okay, so yeah,
Cheap,
they got
all bonus contract.
Yeah, so it's they're all kind of in a similar range. So I can see Scribner, he'll get first shot at it. And then we'll see. Like they still have John Peters, who probably is better than his rating, and is probably going to get one heck of a contract since he's a free agent after this year.
But he's a power back. Does that fit what they're trying to do?
I don't know. I don't know what scheme they're running.
I don't know either. JW and I talk a lot, but it's like you do your thing. You need general questions. I ask. I know you'll do the same with a lot of other people. It's just like, okay, where they fit, how they fit in here. Because we're kind of looking at their draft. Let me take a look, see what they did draft wise.
Yeah, I am seeing a lot more pass blocking linemen than they had in the past. So it does look like they're moving to much more, scheme friendly. For
maybe more vertical, maybe more air raid, could be pistol. I don't know. Pistol is like the vanilla catch all for everything.
It is, but something like vertical probably will work really well for them. Considering John Peters is a power back.
Well, I mean, look what Smackham's has done with West Virginia with that vertical set. So I mean, it can make sense.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I like seeing people do well with schemes that are off the beaten path. So, although I did see the other day that someone, was it Sage, said that they didn't really see anyone who'd run like run and shoot.
Not yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
me
neither.
Either level.
I thought about running run and shoot last year, but West Coast just fit the receivers I had much better.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny because my first coaching job when I was in the Army at Fort Polk, the coach I coached under was a freshman quarterback under Tiger Ellison, the inventor of the run and shoot. So we were working with the original scribbled notes. Was our playbook. I mean, he had it in it was a 3-ring binder at that time. So, a big, did them outside to it. But that was literally how I learned the game. So I'm like run and shoot. I'm like, this isn't run and shoot. I mean, 4 wide, you see, but this isn't even Hawaii stuff. I mean, I would love to have sat down with June Jones or Mouse or anybody like that, just because they were contrarian to their time, which I tend to be as a coach. I'm contrary. It's like when I was coaching high school football, everybody spread. Well, guess what we ran? We ran Navy triple option. Because one, I dealt with a lot of Native American kids. We didn't have a lot of weight room time. I need something that was simple for them to understand. And it wasn't wing T because everybody in the state of Arizona ran the wing T or was running the wing T. So it's like, we're going to run something nobody does. What, you mean everybody does? So contrarian was kind of the approach. So just kind of looking at this. So I guess who's kind of like that team that you think is going to surprise everybody? That's kind of like under the radar, whether it's going to be good or bad. There's going to be under the radar and you become better, or under the radar and they're like worse than we thought.
I would have said the Chargers, except everyone knows the Chargers are on the come up, and so that's, I guess I can't really use them. I really like what Seattle's done, and their linebacking core is just silly. So I'm going to go with Seattle just because all the other teams that pop into mind are probably the same ones that everyone's thinking, Jets and Chargers and so on. And I guess the Browns too, but again, that's one of those teams that probably everyone's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. As far as the downside goes, well, the easy answer, I guess, would be the easy answer is Cincinnati, just because of their unfortunate cap situation in the offseason, where they basically had to lose, like, their starting quarterback and everything else. Plus, that division's gotten so much better. Cleveland's getting so much better. Pittsburgh, you can never count them out. I guess I'm not quite sure about Baltimore. I thought they were doing better, but for some reason, people talk about them like they're not sure how they're going to do. So, probably a team I'd have to look at a bit more because, I thought they were fine, but I've seen a lot of people talking about, well, they probably, they might finish last in that division. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
So,
how much do you think Green leaving is going to affect Baltimore?
Well, Syndicate's going to have to work a lot harder, that's for sure.
Right.
Because whatever else you want to say about Green, he did a lot. Or at the very least, he talked a lot. Did a crap ton of scouting. Probably was their heads guy as far as drafting and scouting and diving into numbers. And, I might be selling Syndicate short, but, that from the outside, that's the impressions that we got. So with him leaving to Arizona, I don't know if anyone else is there with Syndicate because I think the other guy they'd hired kind of like fell off.
Let me take a look. No, let's be honest with you, I don't know because I know they mentioned something, and then I thought, oh, let's take a look. Baltimore, there we are.
Yeah, it says assistant is Dolphins, but I don't know if that. If that person's active.
I think he's brand new, isn't he? Dolphins.
He was. I don't know how new. And my sense of time is terrible. So new to new might have been like 3 months at this point. Who knows?
Well, new could have been within the last year because with the job I've got where I work so early, I don't spend as much time on here as I used to. Like when I was a realtor, I had more time to spend on here. But I mean, because Baltimore's only got 0.1 for cap space this year. They got almost 25 million in dead space this year, which affects their numbers next year. Only putting them around 40. So there's probably going to be some. It would seem to me that there would probably be some adjustments this off season.
Yeah, they kind of have to. I mean, there's quite a few contracts floating around that I'm looking at on their side. There was like, okay, they got Jags, they got just the guys that's like they go away. No one's gonna care. But yeah, they're really, they got Chop for a couple more years at some really, really big numbers. 26, 27, 29 mil
right
over the next 2 years. And I thought they'd built around them a little bit more than I have, but looking through their roster, I thought they were further along than I thought, quite frankly.
Well, just looking at the years left, you got 5 70 or above players that are in their final year of a contract.
Yeah, so that 40 million is going to go away kind of quickly.
Well, it comes down to the question, is this where they make the scheme change for next year and just eat it a little bit and let certain people walk? Or you put in, I mean, you're looking, because you got a free safety, you've got outside linebacker, inside linebacker, you've got a guard. I mean, 70s aren't great, but they're good depth players. It's like with us at the Titans, we don't have anybody really in the 80s except for Sola. But we have a lot of depth players. That's like even I traded with you for Aquino because he fit a scheme.
Right.
No, he fits the scheme that we're running. Is he spectacular? Now he's a 65 overall, but he fits, he fills the need more than anything.
And as a fourth year, he's not completely useless. And I always liked Aquino. It's just, we had so many other wide receivers above him that he was just buried.
Yeah, I know
So,
that.
yeah, I hope he does well for you.
I hope he does too. It'd be nice to have, like I said, he can still build.
Yeah. We don't
I
play it,
guess
really?
I don't think we do. Gosh, I don't know. I don't even know my schedule this year.
Me neither.
I mean, I have been so busy with other things. Let's pull up my schedule real quickly. Team. Let's see. Well, all they've got is no preseason.
They got the preseason? Okay, that's fine. But
Yeah, I got Baltimore for preseason. So I got Baltimore, Cleveland, and Chicago. So
okay. But yeah, no, yeah, and for the people watching, you probably saw, me and Wheeler just kind of go off into cap talk, and some of your eyes might be crossing, but honestly, that's one of the things I probably like about being a GM is working with a cap and planning out. On the college side, you heard me say that when I'm recruiting for 2 years from now. And I'm, in a very real sense, I do the same thing when I'm looking at football rosters. Like just now, you'd mentioned that you thought they were going to make decisions on change. If they're going to change schemes, they might do it next year. I'm, in my thinking, I'm thinking they're probably going to do it in 2 years when, Chop's out of contract. And in 2027, they got like $120 million of cap, according to the interface, and, that for me, yes, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm on this website. That probably should not come as a surprise, right?
I think we all are.
We all are. We all are. And from the military side, I'm Signal. I'm prior Signal. You knew I was a nerd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were more nerds than us Intel guys.
Oh yeah, we definitely were. But that's getting back to what I was saying about the cap. That's the kind of thing that I look at. It's like, okay, they got this much cap. We can work with that. I enjoy looking at rosters and saying, well, okay, they're negative this, but you got to work here and do this. I remember working through a trade with New England a few years back when they were basically going to be negative, and working with them to say, I made a trade with them and we traded basically a lot of equal parts, but I did that to basically, obviously I did it to improve a draft pick, but at the same time, we were able to exchange parts of equal value pretty much just so that I could take on the cap, just so that they could get under the cap. And, we could ship them some min salary guys just to help them fill out the roster so that they weren't at 43 players and only, and still only have 0.1 of cap or whatever.
Right. Well, I think the Saints had that same problem. Was it last year? The Saints, I know Bingo had an issue with that. I think it was last year.
Yeah, Bingo had an issue with the cap.
And then we see it this year with Cincinnati. So is this I guess going to your training background, going to my teaching background, is this a teaching aspect that people?
I think that's part of it. And I think part of it is also that sometimes, we've had to adjust, the Sims had to adjust the cap rules because of trades and how trades worked with bonus money and, people taking advantage of the rules. Again, not saying it's illegal, but they were just stretching what they could under the rules to make stuff. So, as a bit of history for the people who don't know, for a while, when you traded a player, the player that got traded, the team that traded the player away, they would absorb the first year's bonus, but the rest of the bonus for subsequent years would travel to the other team for them to pick up. And then this offseason, we switched back to the original, more like the NFL style, where you traded or cut a player, all that dead cap accelerated and stayed with the trading or cutting team.
Right.
And I do think that between that and some people not quite paying attention to how that worked, or extensions, I know extensions are what got Cincinnati in trouble, that we just saw some of them. They're like, oh, crap, I didn't realize what happened. Just a few days ago, not going to name names, but there was a team that was like literally like, oh crap, Tuscan, I cut this player. I totally forgot what that meant for the dead cap. So it put me way under. Can we undo my cut? Kind of thing. So there's definitely a lot of learning curve going on, especially when people aren't necessarily understanding that, hey, this changed, go look at it and see what that means.
Right.
Or people are just, they're bidding on these players, damn the cap. And then in 3-4 years, they're like, huh, what happened to my cap?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, I guess you said, no, you were a math guy. I liked math in high school. Then I got in the real world and it's like, I hate math.
Yeah.
No, I did economics instead. So
not math, but so
it's money. It's money. It's money. It's not math. I used to tell that
confuse the heck out of so many people listening to you right now.
Well, I used to tell that to my students. I hate math, but I love economics. And they're like, "Well, isn't that numbers? It's numbers, but it's money." I mean, it's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit more tangible. You
can fudge the numbers in economics a lot more than you can in math.
Statistics. You can fudge anything. Yeah, because being a political science major, economics is just kind of like a given. Because there's so much that's tied in. It is more of a nuanced type of math. I mean, and then doing spreadsheets, I'm ask Sage, ask Pierce, help me. I'm doing my course through Cordell. And I'm like, I can't figure this out. Help me out on this spreadsheet. And they looking like, God, I've never done that before, type of thing. I'm like, damn, if I'd known you were a spreadsheet guy, I probably would have reached out to you too. Been like, shit, how do I fix this? This is very much a spreadsheet type of game.
It is.
Do you think that kind of limits who plays this?
Yes and no. You can still take over a team and do what you want to do, but you definitely do need someone who understands the implications. Like the fact that we have the interface and the fact that, it tells you when you're in your free agency page or on your roster page that this is, you sign these people, this is what you got left. You can work with that. So you can definitely play without being a math spreadsheet guy or gal.
Are you at disadvantage though?
Oh, are you at a disadvantage? I would say so. Because, you might end up offering that max, that silly contract that totally works now, but 3 years from now kind of totally hamstrings you and you didn't see it coming. You might be that person that tanks your team and trades for like 8 first-round picks, only to realize, oh, look, I have to pay them all, or I have to pick up their options all at the same time in 4 freaking years. So yeah, in that sense, that does put you at a disadvantage. But my hope is if I come into this, I'm fresh to the sim, I pick up a team like that. I can make moves by myself for the first year or two, but once I learn the ropes, if I realize I'm not that math spreadsheet guy, I'm going to try to find someone in the sim to work with me who is.
Right.
And the hope is that over time I've learned, I'll have learned, okay, he knows what he's doing. She knows what he's doing. Maybe I can come on, I can convince them to help me out because, not to really call it culture, for example, but, he said before that even though his real life job is as a tax accountant, I do a better job of managing our cap than he would.
Okay.
Which sounds funny, but
Wait. So culture, the Mr. out of, because obviously culture on the site is an avatar after the dude's an accountant. Not just an accountant, but deals with taxes specifically.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, you could tell that's an avatar then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, every role we play is kind of an extension of a part of us somewhere.
Right.
Just exaggerate and turn it up to 11, or maybe in culture's case, like 1100. But, it's there. but yes, he's a tax accountant. And I'm pretty sure he said this in the chat before, so it's not like I'm doxing him or anything.
I know, but it's just because you hear culture and you see this and some of the outlandish stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's not afraid to say his mind, which I love about culture. And a lot of the guys on there, they're not afraid to say what they say it with their
Mm-hmm.
chest, as I
Yes.
like to say, which is good. But then you're like, wait, did he meet the guy? Like, really? It's like,
Yeah.
that's why I go back to the question: is this an avatar? Is this really who you are? And come in here. When we're kind of going through this, I mean, obviously, everybody has a favorite player that they've had on their team or watch on other teams. I mean, David Ross is obviously the meme has been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like any player that you find has been like become your favorite player because of the way they played in the game, or is this one that you've just really tied to? Is there specifically a favorite player of yours?
I guess if I had to say, it probably would be my outside linebacker at Western Michigan, Chantrell
Okay.
Garrett, either one, because he was my first 5-star recruit, and he's been a starter the entire time. True freshman, and now this is his true senior season. And I think the last mock that was done, I think it was Sage's, had him going like 12th overall.
Okay.
So, for me, he's been that man. Um, that might be a little bit of surprise. You might have thought about Theo. And I do love Theo, but I have to confess I hadn't, despite the fact he's been in my division, Kansas City. I haven't followed him as well as I probably could have or should have. But yeah, I think as far as my favorite player, it would be Chantrell, I think.
What about Durham Simmons? Wasn't he on that team with
He
Theo
was.
too?
He was. He was my for the Heisman year, for the year we went to the championship game. Yeah, he was our wide receiver 1.
Okay.
And I'm glad to say he's been doing well. It's just weird because up until last year when I recruited that red zone 5-star,
Mm-hmm.
he's the first 5-star we've ever had at the wide receiver position at Western Michigan.
Okay.
Everyone else has been 3s and 4s.
All right. So I guess when you're looking at the recruiting, obviously stars is kind of like a basic indicator of talent. I mean, we know from real life that those don't always pan out. Going through there, I mean, I can think of Todd Marinovich would be one from quarterback from USC that left and went to. I think he went to the Raiders, and then he was gone after a year.
Yeah, he did not last very long at all.
Yeah. So I guess when you're looking, how much are you looking at overall versus potential, specifically with college? Because we don't know until they get down campus what they've got.
Yeah, that's kind of a balancing act. And the answer is it depends. I guess for me, I'm probably looking more at potential, generally speaking, because as I've said a few times on this cast, I'm recruiting for 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not recruiting for next year. So if someone starts at a B- overall versus a C+, that's probably not going to affect me too much. I'm probably going to be more interested in the scheme fit and their potential than anything else. Just because I unless I need them next year. Obviously, everyone would love to have a 5-star, A overall, A potential, but for where I am, I'm going to look probably more potential than overall, just because of where I expect them to play. For other teams, I could totally see that, being the flip. And for example, 2 teams like in the Central Michigan being one, F the chips. But despite them being an AI team, they're a team that basically this was a year where they were going to fall off a cliff because, all the great players were seniors. And, outside of like the very first year, they never really got recruited, or they never got coached, I should say. And even then, the coach they had tried to recruit, he was trying we're going to recruit all the 2 stars with D overall and A+ potential and see how that worked. Spoiler alert, it didn't.
Yeah.
So they should have fallen off a cliff. However, having said that, a lot of their recruiting last year was, the AI recruited a whole bunch of players that were like B overall and D potential. So basically they can come in and start like right away.
Right.
And we'll see how that works. But the whole point of me saying that is this is a team that's not going to like go from 9-10 wins competing for the division, for the championship, to all of a sudden dropping to like 3 wins.
Right.
Like they could have. And then on the user side, Northern Illinois is kind of in the same boat. And I'm not calling out Abe. He's actually done a great job since he took over. But the fact is, he took over like the middle of last year.
Right.
So he's done a great job recruiting, but this is always going to be the year where the wheels fell off for the Huskies because all their guys graduated. I think Clem put a stat in about some of the MAC teams, and he's, about number of returning starters. Northern Illinois has 3 returning starters from last year.
Right.
So, it's going to be a rough year, but with that in mind, a lot of the people he recruited, were going to be were a lot of B overall players. Some of them had D potential, some had a little bit better, but, a big part of what he did for recruiting is so that he can play those players right now if he needed to.
Right.
And for a lot of his class, he probably does need to.
Right.
So, that's those are examples of, people recruiting for, I need them right now. So I'm going to recruit overalls, and I'm going to hope that the potential plays up because they got more reps.
Okay.
Whereas me, I've got my starters. So I don't think anyone I recruit is going to start next year unless they are much, much better than I thought they were. So I'm probably going to focus more on the overalls.
Okay.
Having said that, I have learned over the years that I can't just say, yeah, let me recruit a bunch of 3 stars and build from there. Because, the likes of the Tennessees and the Bowling Greens, they're just so good that I'm not going to catch up to them by playing just slow and steady. Yes,
Okay.
I'm still going to recruit 3s. But I can't just say, yeah, let me get a class of 15 to 20 of them and then build slow from there. Because I'm just going to get left in the dust by Bowling Green and, Tennessee and Purdue or whoever.
Great. So, we're almost at the end here. So is there anything that we've missed?
I don't think so. Because if we did miss something, I probably talked about it because I rambled on about something else. So I don't think we did.
All right, so nothing pressing there for you. Well, on this podcast, we have a tradition where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who it is. And being that I filmed these so out of conjunction with each other, it's going to be a little bit different. But question left for you is, what is the favorite thing about the community that you're in inside the simFBA? And what would you share as like a promotional point for somebody looking at this?
Okay, so the first part of the question, what do I like about the community, is the fact that it's just active to begin with. We talk a bit about the old sim. We've referenced it here and there, but one of the that I'm going to ramble. I'm going to give a side story. That's just how I am. So when I came to old sim, you remember Pumph?
Mm-hmm. He's who I learned under.
Yeah, and he's the one that brought me and a few people over from another sim. There was another sim called Deep Route.
Okay.
That, you run a team, draft players, whatever. But it was so quiet that basically, like, I played, I drafted, I did diddly squat, season ran, next off season. And then, we just go from there. And I was not invested in the community. It was just boards and forums, and there wasn't really a whole lot of, talk about this player or build these backstories or make predictions as to who's going to finish here. So I'd actually, when Pump recruited me to come to the older sim, I did both for a little while, and then the community and the engagement and people writing these stories and being invested in these players, like, yeah, this is the sim I want to play at. So when I left the other sim, I basically posted this short press conference saying, um, thanks for the fish, guys. It's been real. I've had the City Beach Land Sharks is what I called my team back then.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna leave them to some other team that actually gets invested enough to get them past their potential or let them meet their potential. And basically most of the comments were like, dang, dude, I didn't even know who you were, and I didn't know you had this team for this long, because I'd had them for like 15 seasons or whatever.
Wow.
So, that kind of gives you an idea of the level of involvement that kind of brought me to Old Sim and maybe, like that. And then when we moved to this sim, right, the level of engagement's still pretty much there. We write stories about our players, we make things up, we have backstories, Matt Howard is a meme for a great reason, and I love Kirby for it. So, just the level of engagement and the fact that, we're all willing to joke with each other and talk with each other and make fun of each other and make fun of each other's players and, and roll with these backstories and these fictional pieces of data that we've invested way more than we probably should have.
Right.
That's what I love about this community. As far as how I pitch that to somebody, that's a hard one, because if you're already into a sim like this, that's easier, because I can pitch the community all day long and the level of investment, and that we're always talking in the Discord, and that we'll make up these stories and or even pass along older traditions like the sock. Someday you might get Dean on here, and that'll be a great thing.
Yeah. Actually, what's the over under? And he's actually eating the sock. I mean, somebody paid for John Gruden to come ask that question.
Yeah. Yes. If I hope it doesn't happen, but if I ever get the first overall pick, I am totally fine paying for a cameo for some other random NFL personality, because we've already had Dean Blandino reference the sock. We've already had John Gruden reference the sock. We had Hugh Jackson as a cameo, but he didn't talk about the sock.
Yeah, see, I didn't have Hainsworth talk about the sock because I totally forgot about it. Otherwise, I would have had Hainsworth say something about it.
But yeah, no, if I ever get a chance to do a cameo for the first overall pick, the sock is getting referenced somehow. Whether they do go off on their own, like Blandino and Gruden, they were just told about the sock and then they said whatever they said.
Yeah.
Right? So that's totally happening. So someone who already knows about what sim sports are, that's what I'd totally sell them on the community and the level of backstory that we have. For someone who's not sim, as long as they know about sports, I guess, do you like having a level of control? Do you like being able to recruit your players? Do you like being able to build your team up? Then, this is the sim for you. And this is why. Now, if you don't know about sports, okay, it is what it is, right? I actually met with Sarge when he came to this area for training, and he actually got promoted here. So I actually attended his promotion ceremony, and his family was there, his wife and his parents. And as I was, went up to his wife and, congratulated her on the work that she and her family did.
Right.
I mentioned that, yes, I literally said, yes, I am one of Sarge's weird fantasy football internet friends.
Right.
And he was like, oh, they do exist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, we do exist. We're real.
Yeah. It was funny. He brought up Pump. I still talk to Pump for Discord because we did other sims like out of the park baseball and some other, and we just kind of keep in touch. I mean, he's busy doing the college football scene too, being an official, and he's been very instrumental on a lot of the sim. And I still talk with him. In fact, I'd love to get him on here just so everybody could see him again. I mean, he is, whether you liked him or not, he is an integral part of the history of this sim.
Yes,
from old sim to this sim, and we've been in a lot of things.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought him up because I learned under him because I was at San Diego and the old sim with him, and then
I actually met him on one of those trips that I'd made.
Yeah,
it was him. I met him, Rocket, and I don't know if you remember Stincy.
Yeah, I remember Stincy.
Yeah, I met with them, and fun fact. And I know we're really going over time, but that's okay.
Oh, I got all day. I'm off.
Yeah. So fun fact, that was that get together I had with them up in the DC area was the first time I'd actually heard about this sim.
Right.
Back when they were just calling it New Sim.
Right.
Because Stincy made a comment about it, and they kind of glared at him because they thought I was so tight with Saluna, that guy, that I would say something to them. So that was the first I'd even heard about New Sim, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
As though they explained it, I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'd love to make it back to DC to go meet Rocket and some of the. Isn't PRP in that area too?
Yeah, actually, quite a few people are. I think PRP is. I know Sub is there.
Yeah. And then Pump is obviously in that area too.
Yeah, Pump is in that area. I want to say who else was up there, because there was someone else that was up there that I couldn't meet because I couldn't get away.
I think Smackums is in that region too. He may be like Virginia or something.
Well, last I heard, he was down south a few hours in Richmond.
Well, I don't know. Richmond, Virginia is not that far from DC, and because I know Sage moved down into Tennessee.
It's like a 2-hour drive, depending on traffic.
Yeah, if it's anything like Southern California traffic, it's 2 hours to go 10 miles. So
it can be. 95 is bad.
Yeah. So it's just, it's like if I ever make it back to Baltimore, I'd be like, hey guys, I'm coming. Let's all get together and maybe tie it in with your training or something. Just have it be, we could just, I'd love to just sit down. In fact, I'd love to do it just if I had the time off to do it this July, I'd love to do it because the other sim I'm in, they do a convention every year. Well, it's in Baltimore this July.
Yeah.
So that'd be great to all of a sudden take the two sims and start meeting because you guys have met Cam, you've met Eddie. I've got a couple of the other people lined up from that sim as well to come over and talk. So I just want people to see each other.
No, that would be cool. But I said earlier that I don't know if I'd be able to invest the time into another sim, but yeah, just at least looking around or meeting other folks, that would be totally awesome.
Well, the best part about the other sim is it's a pay for play, obviously, and you create the avatar. And you don't do anything other than you do a progression once a week, unless you want to get involved in doing scouting and coaching, and then that's different. But
it feels like the kind of sim where, okay, yes, I could just pay my couple of dollars and just float along, but it feels like at least at the beginning, if I get into something like that, I'm gonna want to get into it. Yeah. Now, whether I keep that level of engagement, we'll see. With something like Deep Route, after a while, it just became click, 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 done. Forget about it for a few weeks. With a sim like this, and I suspect with probably something like SFL, I'd probably be a lot more dive headfirst into it. Really want to meet the people and learn about it, which is why I've said I probably wouldn't be able to, spend the time that I should into it.
Yeah, it's definitely something. As like we had Eddie Gage, who's one of the old school legacy guys. Because we're in season 24. He's been around since season 9. It's 2 seasons a year, and he's like, Yeah, I was just playing. I wasn't really paying attention. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, I can do better than this. And then he got caught into it, and now he's one of the owners of one of the legacy teams. So that's pretty cool.
Right.
Well, Jarrett, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know it's been going for a while here and talking and just reminiscing, and real people talking fake sports is always interesting to me. But also having that common military background and kind of that coaching philosophy intact too. For those people who don't know, I'm Keith Wheeler. I'm with Simulation Football Association, simFBA.com, and simulationfl.net. Doing things, talking fake sports with real people. This is Jarrett, Western Michigan, Atlanta Hawks, Seattle Mariners, Michigan, and Raiders. Are you doing
and
hockey?
Soon to be Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, you're the one that took the Canucks.
Yep. I took the Canucks.
I ended up taking Anaheim Ducks instead.
Oh, you wanted the Canucks?
Well, I'm from Oregon, so I grew up watching like the Portland Winterhawks, which was the basically the minor league team for the Blackhawks. And being up there, anything that's Northwest related, I would have loved. But now between you and Tuscan, it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, I'm from the Northwest originally as well. So yeah, I've been a longtime Canucks fan. To the point where when Seattle got a team, people were asking why I didn't, flip to them or whatever. Like,
it's called loyalty. Sorry.
Yeah, I had the hat, watched Pavel Bure, watched the Sedin twins, West Coast Express, Kirk McLean.
Yep.
Watched. Had our hearts broken in '94. We don't talk about 2011.
Nope. Never talk about that year.
Yep. So.
I grew up watching, and this is because I'm 55. I remember watching an ABC Wide World of Sports. They had an Atlanta Flames game. That was literally the year before That's literally the year before they moved to Calgary.
Right. I totally forgot that hockey was on Wide World Sports. I do remember that, but I remember watching like all these other random things like skiing and Formula One and other things that were considered like, kind of fringe at the time.
Come on, the agony of defeat, watching the guy going off the ski jump, just biffing it.
Like, how did he not die?
I'm like, I'm never doing ski jumps. Well, usually right after that was Jacques Cousteau too. So.
Yeah, and also, what was it? What was that show? Superstars,
and then usually right after that was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Yes, with Lauren Green narrating.
Mm-hmm. All that stuff.
And for the audience there, we're talking old stuff. So, we just got a bunch of 50-somethings just kind of like...
glaze your eyes over people.
Yeah. Back when you actually had to turn the knobs on the TV. That's how old we're talking.
Back when my nickname was Remote. Go turn it, because I had an older brother.
Hey, yeah. That was the remote. Hey, kid, go change the channel.
Yeah. And UHF and playing with antennas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All that stuff. Yeah, I remember that. But like I said, I appreciate your time for this. And for those folks that are listening, this has been Behind the Clipboard with Jarrett from the simFBA.
See you all soon. Thanks.